الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد
اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب دعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والعصمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكاظمية والحجج الردبية والجود الثقفية والنقاوة النقبية والهيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه. أما بعد فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Master of our time, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The days of Shahr Ramadan, they continue. A month which in the traditions has been described as a month of mercy, a month of forgiveness, and a month of blessing. It's a month that when you examine the Muslim world, you find many make changes within this month. That when you look within the Middle East, for example, you find that those shops which are normally open in the daytime, they're open in the nighttime. You find those streets which are bustling and filled in the day, they're empty in the day and they're filled at the night. Of course, living here, we don't have that luxury. But you find from the outward, we alter our schedule. That we wake up earlier in the morning to eat. That we incorporate the recitation of the Quran within this month. We get accustomed to not eating within the day. But at the same time, as there are outward changes within this month, one should also seek to implement internal changes within this month as well. For it's a month of reflection, it's a month of introspection, it is a month where one seeks to facilitate his connection with Allah. It is that month which, according to the Prophet in his famous sermon on the last day of Sha'ban, it is that month in which we have been invited towards the banquet of Allah, that we are the guests of Allah within this month. Whenever you go to a gathering, there is a host in that gathering. It is upon the host to honor his guest. And the more generous the host is, the more he honors the guest. Within this month, we are the guests of Ajwadul Ajwadeen. We are the guests of Saqiyul Asqiya, the one who is the most generous of the generous. So Allah, He gave us blessings within this month. One of those blessings was the revelation of the Quran within this month. But at the second level, another blessing was that He mandated Siyam and fasting within this blessed month. You see, each day of the month of Ramadan, it serves as a filter. That if you look at a filter, you find a filter has various layers. And each layer, it catches a different impurity based upon the density of the layer. You find within the same way, each day within this month, it catches impurities. And through the act of fasting, you find that we remove these vices, we remove these sins within this month. For the Prophet of God would say that the most unfortunate person is the one who is not forgiven in Shahru Ramadan. That the one who is not forgiven within this month is the most unfortunate person. And without a doubt, one of those acts which seeks to build this purification is that mandatory act within this month of fasting. But just as in the same way, that not all prayers are equal, not every single fast is equal. That when you look at the traditions, you find this concept is elucidated upon. That, for example, one tradition of the Prophet, it states that within my ummah, two people will be praying. Their ruku will be the same. Their sujood will be the same. But the difference in their prayers is the difference between the heavens and the earth. You find another tradition of the Imam says that sometimes 1/2 of prayer is accepted. Sometimes 1/3, sometimes 1/4, sometimes 1/5, sometimes 1/10, and sometimes that prayer is thrown back at a person like a piece of cloth at his face. Now, many of us, we know this concept that when it comes to prayer, the factor of the acceptance of prayer is the hudur and the presence of the heart and that spiritual attentiveness within the prayer. But you find the same way, the traditions, they elucidate that there is an internal reality and nature to the concept of fasting. For the Prophet of God would also say that so many people, they experience hunger and thirst within this month, but how few of them are fasting. This goes to show that fasting has an inner reality. Now, when it comes to prayer, we know how to attain that inner reality. It is through that spiritual attentiveness and the presence. But the question comes up, is that how do we attain the inner reality of fasting? And tonight, I'll seek to analyze this topic, that as we continue within this month, we'll be able to experience the true reality of fasting and recognize the dimensions contained within. And I'll do this discussion in a number of stages. At the first level, I'll examine that verse of the Quran which speaks about the mandation of fasting. From the second level, I'll present those ways in which fasting is like no other act of worship, no other act of ibadat. From the third level, I'll present the 3 dimensions towards fasting and the 3 dimensions in reality which are found in any act of ibadat. And upon the 4th level, we'll examine the traditions pertaining towards this blessed month in order that we can recognize the value of this holy month. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You find when it comes to the Holy Quran, the verse which mandates fasting is that verse which is found in chapter 2, and it states what? It says, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam, kama kutiba alal ladina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Allah says, O believers, fasting has been prescribed for you just as it was prescribed for those before you in order that you can be God conscious. You know, over here, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu. You know what the beauty of this line is? Is that it shows an intimate connection between the Creator and the believers. That Allah, He addresses the believers directly by saying, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu. Oftentimes within the Quran, when Allah, He addresses the kuffar or the mushrikeen or those who go against His commands, He'll place the word qul and make the Prophet a barrier in between. But when it comes to the believers, Allah found them so worthy that He addresses them directly by saying, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba alal ladina min qablikum. That fasting was prescribed to you just as it was prescribed for those before you. You know, the Quran has an interesting psychology when it comes to speaking. Allah, He knew that the act of fasting is not the ideal situation for the human being. That the human being, when you tell him not to eat all day or drink any water, it's something he would be adverse towards. So Allah, He speaks with mercy. He says, "O human beings, O the ummah of the Prophet, you are not the only people who are fasting. There are people before you who fasted as well." That when living in this country, we saw the occasion of Lent, where before the day of Easter, it was a form of fasting for 40 days that they would give up an act. Further than that, within the Holy Quran, you find within the Surah of Maryam, in the story of Mary, what is the incident that occurs? That Maryam, she worries that after Hazrat Isa is born, what will the people of the town say? What did Allah say to her? Allah said to her that fast, but her fast was a fast from speaking. It says, فَقُولِي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَانِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. That verse, it states that, "O Maryam, say to the people that I have made another, I have made a vow that I am fasting, and that vow is that I will not speak to any human being for 3 days." You find this is an example of a fast before the Muslim Ummah was seeking to fast, and it was mandated upon them. But Allah, He does something else. He also mentions the reason of fasting. 2 verses before, it talks about retaliation in the Quran. It says, "Ya ayyuhalladina amanu kutiba alaykumul qisas fil qatl." Within that time period, if a tribe killed one person, they would kill tribes upon tribes in return. There was no system of justice. So the Quran sought to bring social equity. So Allah, He gives a system that there will be justice and retaliation. But notice the wordings. It says, "Ya ayyuhalladina amanu kutiba alaykumul qisas fil qatl." End of discussion. Allah doesn't say kutiba alaykumus siyam, end of discussion. Allah, He speaks with mercy to prepare the heart of the listener to accept this mandation. It's a lesson towards us that when we give a command or an order to someone, speak in this manner, that speak in a way of mercy. And there are a number of aspects which make fasting like no other ibadat. There are a number of aspects. Every other act of worship, it is the performance of an act. That when you do salat, it is the performance of an act. When you go to Hajj, it is the performance of the act. But the fasting is the only act which is not the performance of the act, it is the negation of the act. That you are not being asked to do something, you are being asked to refrain from something. This is why the hadith, it says, Allah, He says in one hadithul Qudsi, Hadithul Qudsi are those direct revelations of Allah which are considered outside of the Quran, and there's slight nuances. But you find Allah, He says that fasting is for me and I am the reward of fasting. Allama Tabatabai, commenting upon this hadith, he says that the reason Allah says I am the reward of fasting is because fasting is the most sincere ibadat. And this brings me to my second point, that when you look at a person praying, you with your eyes can see him praying. When a person goes to Hajj, you with your eyes can see that he went to Hajj. But fasting is that ibadat that nobody sees the fasting person. Now it's another matter that if the person is angry or quick to react, then you can tell he's fasting. But with your eyes, you cannot see that that individual is fasting. This is the second level which makes it unique. The third aspect of this ibadat which makes it unique is that it is amongst the longest of worships. That prayer, it takes you 5, 6, however long it takes you. But fasting, you're fasting from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And the next point about fasting, the fourth aspect which makes it like no other ibadat, is that you continue your daily routine as you're fasting. That every other act of worship, you step aside to do that act. But when it comes to the act of fasting, it's one that you continue alongside you. And this goes to show that even as you continue your day, there should be an inner nature and an inner reality that you bring within your heart while you're in a state of fasting. This is why when it comes to fasting, there are 3 dimensions towards fasting. The first dimension is fasting at the level of the Sharia. The second dimension is fasting at the level of the Tariqah. The third level of fasting is fasting at the level of the Haqiqah and the reality of fasting. Now, what is each of these dimensions? The level of the jurisprudential level, the level of the Sharia, is that you stay away from food, drink, and all of the various invalidators of a fast. This is the most fundamental level of fasting, but it is not the end point. It is the basis and the foundation. For after this, you have the ethical level of fasting or the tariqah of fasting. It is about this level that the 6th Imam would say that when you fast, your hands should fast, and your skin should fast, and your eyes should fast, and your hair should fast. And when you are fasting, that day should not be the same as you are not fasting. That day in which you are fasting should not be like that day in which you aren't fasting. You know, it's stated that within the life of Rasulullah, there was a lady who was cursing her servant. So what Rasulullah did is that he sent her a tray of food. That lady, she sends a message back to Rasulullah. She says, "O Prophet of God, I can't eat this. I am in a state of fasting." The Prophet of God said, "It did not look like you were in a state of fasting, for you were cursing your servant at this moment." For when a person he fasts, his day, his heart should be in a different mindset. It should have a different reality. And you find those who are able to get to the second level of fasting, it is a gateway towards the third level, the haqiqah and the reality of fasting. And without a doubt, this is that reality which the awliya of Allah and the close ones towards Allah, they attained. That when they are in a state of fasting, it's a complete communison with their Lord, with no distractions in between. It is that state of Amir al-Mu'mineen in worship. That when they said to Ali ibn Abi Talib that, "Oh Ali, do you worship a Lord you do not see?" Amir al-Mu'mineen replied by saying, "I don't worship a Lord I can't see. This Lord whom I worship, I don't see him with these physical eyes, but I see him with the eyes of my heart, that I feel him with that reality." And you find the power of fasting is that it builds this purification in a person to take that reality to his own capacity. You know, it's stated that one day, 3 individuals, they come to Medina. They decide that they're going to be the guest of the Prophet. Then they say to themselves that it will be a burden if all 3 of us go towards Rasulullah. So one of them went to the Prophet, the other one went towards Amir al-Mu'mineen, the third one, he stayed in the precincts of the Kaaba, the house of Allah, that he came towards Makkah, not Medina. You find when they go there, the one who stayed in the house of Rasulullah, the Prophet of God gave him a place to sleep and some dates and some water. The one who went to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the same thing, a place to sleep, some dates and some water. You know, the hadith after all, it says that my hand and the hand of Ali in justice are equal. The hadith of Rasulullah, it states this. You know, not to detract from the discussion. You know, it's stated that one day Salman, he goes towards Rasulullah. When Salman goes towards Rasulullah, he says, "Oh Rasulullah, can you give me some dates?" So Rasulullah gives Salman 7 dates. After that, Salman, he goes towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, Salman, 10th level of Iman, this Salman was. Salman, he goes towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, oh Ali ibn Abi Talib, can you give me some dates?" Amir al-Mu'mineen hands some dates towards Salman. Salman, he begins to count the dates. As he's counting the dates, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Oh Salman, if Rasulullah had given you more, I would have given you more as well." That the hand of Rasulullah and the hand of Ali ibn Abi Talib in justice, fil adli sawa, that they're equal. So So you find the one who goes to the house of Rasulullah in the initial incident, He receives dates, water, a place to sleep. The one in the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he receives the same thing. But the one who went towards the precincts of the Kaaba, neither did he receive a place to sleep, nor did he gain anything to eat. It's at that moment when they congregate in front of the Prophet, and this man he mentions, at that moment Jibreel, he descends. Jibreel says, "O Prophet, tell this individual, don't think that he walked away empty-handed. For the ones who slept in your house and the house of Ali, they were deprived of the opportunity to fast upon this day. And the one who was in my house, he was fasting. And the ones who were in your house, they only prayed Salatul Fajr. But the one in my house, he prayed Salatul Layl as well." So never belittle this act of fasting, particularly in this month of Ramadan. For there are a number of traditions which show the value of this month. You know, have you ever pondered over this word Ramadan? You know, it comes from the word ramd in Arabic. Ramd is that act when your foot is burned from the desert sand. Either it is that burning sand or it is the act of the foot burning from the desert sand. The hadith of Rasulullah, it says that it has been called Ramadan this month because it scorches away the sins of an individual. Another hadith of the Prophet says that the doors of the heavens, they open up upon the first of this month. And they remain open until the last of this month. And there's tradition after tradition about this subject. But without a doubt, the most famous, or amongst the most famous of those traditions, is that famous sermon of Rasulullah introducing the month of Ramadan. You find this sermon which he gives on the last day of Sha'ban. Shaykh as-Suduq narrates it, and the narrator is Amir al-Mu'mineen from Rasulullah. If I could change my words, Babu Madinatul Ilm is narrating from Madinatul Ilm in this narration. The door to the city of knowledge is narrating from the city of knowledge. Rasulullah within this sermon, he says, "Ayyuhan nas, qad aqbala ilaykum shahrullah bil barakati wal rahmati wal maghfirah." He says, "O people, the month of Allah has come to you." That he uses that ism jam, that name of Allah, which all of the sifat and the attributes, they come upon this locus. He says this is the month of Allah, and it has come with mercy and blessings and forgiveness. He says, "Huwa shahrun indallahi afdalul shuhur, wa ayyamuhu afdalul ayyami, wa layalihi afdalul layali, وَسَاعَاتُهُ أَفْضَلُ السَّاعَاتِ." He says this is that month which is the best of months. Its days are the best of days. Its nights are the best of nights, and its hours are the best of hours. He says this is that month which you have been invited to be the guests of Allah. And this is that month where you have been made those who are honored by Allah. Then he continues the sermon. He says, "Anfasukum fihi tasbih wa nawmukum fihi ibadah." He says within this month, your breathing is the tasbih of Allah. It is that act of preventing any deficiencies and acknowledging the lack of deficiencies towards Allah. You know, and every other month, you have to perform an act to receive reward from Allah. But this month, there's something so special about the spiritual nature of this month, that even your breathing is tasbih and your sleep is ibadah. You know, normally I don't give people permission to sleep in my lectures, but if there's a month to do so, it would be this month. For within this month, even sleep is ibadah. Then after that, he says, وَأَمَلُكُمْ فِيهِ مَقْبُولٌ وَدُعَاؤُكُمْ فِيهِ مُسْتَجَابٌ. He says your actions are accepted in this month, and your du'as are accepted by Allah within this month. That these are the blessings of this month. The Prophet of God within the sermon, he explains the entire reality of this month, and I don't have time to go into it in its entirety. You can look it up online and read it upon your own time. But the Prophet, he says also, he says that within this month, take care of the orphans as well. You know, Rasulullah would say, Ana wa kafilul yatim fil jannah ka hatain. You know, there are a number of hadith of Ahlul Bayt that they would use their hands to signify and make their point. You know, it's stated, for example, I'll give you another example. It's stated upon the day of Ghadir, when Rasulullah gave the hadithul thaqalain, that I leave behind two weighty things, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. The hands of Rasulullah were like this. In Arabic, each finger has a name, sababa, wusta. They asked Imam al-Sadiq that why is it these two fingers? Why was it two sababa? Why was it not these two fingers? The sixth Imam replied by saying, when you look at these two fingers, one of them is bigger than the other. Upon the day of Ghadir, when Rasulullah says Quran and Ahlul Bayt, he used those fingers which were the same, showing that reality that if you want to reach Allah, it goes through these two sources, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So the Prophet, he would use his fingers. Within this hadith, he says, me and the one who takes care of an orphan on the day of judgment are like these two fingers. You know, I beg the question. Some individuals, na'udhu billah, they say Abu Talib is within the fire of hell. The Prophet of God says, me and the one who takes care of any orphan are like these two fingers. What about the man who took care of the greatest orphan in history, Rasulullah himself? And you find there are many lines within the sermon. But at one point, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says to Rasulullah, he says, "O Rasulullah, what is the best act within this month?" You find the Prophet, he says, "Al-wara'u an maharimillah." That the best act within this month is staying away from that which Allah has prohibited. That if one wants to reach the true reality of fasting, it goes through the implementation of this best act. It goes through this act which allows one to attain his maximum potential. You know, it's stated at this point within the sermon that Rasulullah, he begins to cry. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, "O Rasulullah, why are you crying?" Rasulullah says, "O Ali, this is also that month where it's as if I see that you are struck upon your head by the worst of the former and the latter. And O Ali, that blood from your head will make your beard covered in blood within this month." You see, it's from the sunnah of the Prophet to mourn for Ali ibn Abi Talib in Shahr Ramadan. For this is that month that although the silent Quran was revealed within this month, this speaking Quran, this Quranun Natiq was taken up back towards his creator within this month as well. This is that month where the daughters of Fatimatul Zahra, they became truly yatim within this month. That what did Zainab and Kulthum they do after the martyrdom of Ali ibn Abi Talib? You know, tomorrow I'll recite the musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen of the 19th of Ramadan. But you know, I think to myself, where does the musibah of Ali ibn Abi Talib begin? The musibah of Ali ibn Abi Talib, it doesn't begin in Masjid al-Kufa, it begins in Medina. It begins upon the death of the Prophet, that as Amir al-Mu'mineen is doing the ghusl of Rasulullah, you find they conspire to take the haqq and the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen. No, the musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen begins at the mourning of Fatimatul Zahra. She would sit by the grave of her father and say, "Subbat alayya masa'ibun law anna saha subbat alal ayami sirna layaliha." That she would say, that musibah, it befell me. That if that musibah fell upon the brightest of days, they would turn into the darkness of nights. the people of Medina, they would come towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. They would say, "Oh Ali, Zahra, she cries in the day, she cries in the night. Tell Zahra either to cry in the day or the night, not in both." You find after that, they say that Zahra would take Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. She would sit in the shadow of a tree and she would cry. But what did these people do to Zahra? That tree by which Zahra would sit, they cut down that tree. Amir al-Mu'mineen on the outskirts of Medina, he built that house known as Baytul Huzun, the house of sorrows. This is where the musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it begins. The musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it begins at the door of Fatima to Zahra. When they gather at the door of Fatima, they say, "Is Ali within the house?" You find Zahra goes towards the door. They push that burning door upon Fatima to Zahra. It's stated that the rib of Zahra, it breaks. That this is the pain of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ayatollah Wahid Khurasani used to say that imagine that one bone is broken. What is that pain? For 95 or 75 days, the rib of Fatima, it would remain broken. But the example Ayatollah Wahid Khurasani gave was that imagine your finger is broken. I say one line with respect. I say there's a difference between the finger and the rib. If you hold a bone still, the pain, it begins to subside. But the rib is that bone that every time a person breathes, it moves and it causes pain. Then what is the musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Zahra? It's stated after this incident, Zahra, she would give her wasiyah towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. She would say, "Kaffinni bil-layl." She would say, "Ghassilni bil-layl." She would say, "Bury me at the night." She would say, "Shroud me at the night. Give my ghusl at the night." The ulama, they discuss, is that why did Zahra say the night time? The first answer is that she didn't want certain individuals to come towards her janazah. But the second answer is that Zahra didn't want Amir al-Mu'mineen to see that broken rib behind the door. It's stated that as Amir al-Mu'mineen, the one whom is the helper of the Anbiya, as he was doing the ghusl of Zahra, Amir al-Mu'mineen falls unconscious upon the ground. Ayman, she says, "Oh Ali, what has happened?" Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says that Zahra never told me that this rib had been broken. This is the musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he would think of Zahra towards the end of his life. It's stated on the battle of Siffin, they asked Ali, "Oh Ali, you didn't dye your hair." Amir al-Mu'mineen said to that man, "Do you not know that I am still mourning Zahra?" That this is that pain which remained with Amir al-Mu'mineen. It was the pain of Zahra which resonated with Ali. And it was the remembrance of his daughters Zainab and Kulthum as well. When Amir al-Mu'mineen, he moves his station of government from Medina towards Kufa. Initially, his daughters, they didn't go with him. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he went by himself, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. But when he went, after he got towards Kufa, he says, "Oh Hassan, bring my daughters from Medina. But oh Hassan, bring them at night time so no one can see them." He said towards the people of Kufa, "O people of Kufa, go within your houses, for the daughters of Rasulullah, they're coming." It's stated Imam al-Hassan, he brings Sayyidah Zainab, he brings Sayyidah Kulthum from Medina towards Kufa. As they come towards the outskirts of Kufa, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he comes towards the outskirts of Kufa. The narration, it states that he holds on to the rein of the camel of Sayyidah Zainab. He begins to bring her inside Kufa. Kufa. As he's bringing her inside Kufa, he stops. He says, "O Zainab, this is the door of Kufa." After that, they walk a bit farther. He says, "O Zainab, this is the first alleyway in Kufa." They walk a bit further. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "O Zainab, this is the bazaar, the marketplace of Kufa." At that point, Sayyidah Zainab, she says, "Oh my father, why do you not tell this to Abbas or Muhammad al-Hanafiya? Oh my father, I am to stay within the house." Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Oh Zainab, a time will come, it'll be this Kufa. You'll be taken through these alleys. You'll be taken through those bazaros." Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin. Ya Allah, we pray through the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, it's stated when Rasulullah was asked that why do you pray through the right of Ali? Rasulullah replied by saying that you pray through the right of the one who is the most madloom, the one who is the most oppressed. That, "Oh Allah, through the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we pray for those who are sick and ailing from amongst the followers of Ahlul Bayt. We pray for those who have any specific hajat they carry within their hearts, any specific pain they want alleviated that they carry within their heart. That Allah, through the right of Ahlul Bayt, cure them, and through the right of Ahlul Bayt, grant their hajat. And Ya Allah, we pray for the hastening of the reappearance of the Master of our time. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. يا حسين.